you.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. You're watching Live with Faye. I'm Faye. And today we're going to discuss a matter that we believe is of national importance. Now, before I get there, I just want to thank you for subscribing to our channel. Also, for those of you who have joined us right now, I want to remind you that there is a story that's been uploaded by my colleague Amita, who is on the ground reporting in front of AIIMS Hospital in Delhi, where nurses are on they're on an indefinite, I beg your pardon, strike. So she's spoken to the nurses about their demands, and she's also spoken to the patients who are inconvenienced by this strike to find out what's really going on the ground. Do take a look at that story and share it and like that story as well. It gives us the encouragement we need to keep going. Now, coming to what we're discussing right now. Apart from the fact that the government has decided that there will be no winter session of Parliament at all this time because of COVID, and that's a separate debate going on a lot of the television channels, we're talking about a specific law that was brought into, that was approved by the cabinet of the Maharashtra government. It's called the Shakti Act. It specifically has to do with crime against women. Now, according to the Shakti Act, which comes in two parts, the Maharashtra Shakti Criminal Law and the Special Court and Machinery Implementation of the Maharashtra Shakti Criminal Law. It was approved by the cabinet and it was meant to be tabled in the winter session. We understand now that the government is going to sort of refer it to a select committee that will look at it again, because there have been many women's rights activists and groups that have written to the government saying that there are specific problems with these laws. Let me take you through roughly what the laws say. Now, they bring in a death penalty, a life sentence, and hefty fines for perpetrators of rape against women, against children, and acid attacks. They also ask for a completion of the investigation in 15 days and trial within 30 days. There's also a specific clause in this that says if the perpetrators are found guilty, will be punished with imprisonment for life, not less than 10 years. But apart from the fact that it includes a 10 lakh fine that the perpetrator will pay for an acid attack, which will be used for the victim's plastic surgery and face reconstruction, there are 2 points that are slightly worrying. It takes a different look at what consent is to do with the rape laws, and it also brings in punishment for anyone who makes a false complaint. Now, this is what the laws say. There have been a large number of women's rights activists who have said that this will go against the rights of women and will actually be counterproductive. Our point now is to find out why. They've asked the Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray not to table and pass these laws. And we have some of them with us right now to explain to us what their opposition is. Joining us on the show, Abha Singh, who is a lawyer and an activist, very strong voice. Ms. Veena Gowda is an advocate for the Bombay High Court. She's a signatory on the letter that has been given to the Chief Minister. Dr. Nandita Shah is the co-director of the Akshara Center. She is also a signatory on the letter, and we'll have Ranjana Kumari join us through the course of this conversation. But we're going to get started, and we'll also ask questions. We'll pick up the questions from our, chat box as well. Let me get started. I want to first talk about the death penalty because that's the big one, right? So this is normally what happens. Politicians say we'll bring in the death penalty. Activists say this is a bad idea. The misunderstanding here is that people think activists are saying no death penalty because they believe or because they're feeling sad for the perpetrators. I don't believe that's the case. Let's first tackle the clause of death penalty here and find out why there is a problem in this particular case. Let me start with Veena Gowda. Ms. Gowda, good evening and thank you for joining us. We also discovered that both Veena ji and I are from the little town of Chikmagalur in Karnataka, so now we have some shared history. I just want to ask you, as a lawyer who fights these cases in court on a regular basis, what is the problem with the death penalty? Are you being soft on perpetrators? Why are you saying no death penalty?
Thank you very much, Faye, for having us here and having this discussion. I think at the outset, before we get into the death penalty, I would really like to say that We appreciate the government's decision to refer this to the Joint Select Committee. We feel after a very long time that we've actually been heard, that civil society voices have been heard. I mean, I think to me it is a victory of democracy, especially in times like this where government is refusing to listen to voices of people. So I would like to communicate my appreciation on that. Having said that, we do hope that the select committee will hear us. And see, what happens with every time we talk about violence against women, the reaction of politicians is to talk in extreme languages, and death penalty becomes that extreme language. I mean, this is not the first time. I mean, Mr. L.K. Advani said that the central government has also brought it in. Now, the problem with death penalty is one is that many studies have shown that death penalty doesn't really work as a deterrent. It is not the severity of punishment, but consistency of punishment and certainty of investigation, trial, and punishment. So, certainty and consistency rather than severity is what actually works as a deterrent. Now, coming specifically to the area of sexual assault, what studies also show us, both in child sexual abuse as well as in women, the rapes are done by people that the women actually know and the children are related to. So, as it is, there is a lot of hesitation in filing complaints against people that you know. Now, if you say that death penalty is the final possible punishment, the woman would be even more hesitant. Along with the woman, the family too would dissuade her and say that there's a possibility. So, therefore, the reporting will reduce. And another point is, even when it comes to judges, when there is death penalty a possibility, what one sees is that then the judges are also a little hesitant to convict. But at least here we have an option of life or death. But under the Shakti bill, when you're talking about repeat offenders, the only option to a judge is death penalty. And actually, that does not stand the test of constitutionality. In the 70s, in the Mithu's judgment, Supreme Court has said that death penalty cannot be the only punishment. And that's what the Shakti bill brings in when it comes to second offenders. So these are the issues that so therefore, it becomes counterproductive to women. Of course, as feminists, we also believe in fair trial, and we believe that no one has the right to take away anyone's life, including the state. So the fundamental objection is that no one, including the state, must have the right to take away anybody's life. In addition to that, for the reasons that I stated earlier, it is also counterproductive to women.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you're saying that when there is a death penalty, the actual convictions come down, because that's something that, the appeals and judges don't like to have that reverse. They don't like to make a mistake on something so serious. Invariably, perpetrators of crimes of a sexual nature against women and children happen to be members of the family, and if the punishment is death penalty, then the possibility of reporting the crime comes down very drastically. I want to bring in Abha Singh. Abha Singh, such a pleasure to see you after such a long time. We have a question from Hiren Gokani. He says, does the death penalty also increase chances of criminals killing the victim of rape? Does that make the crime more dangerous?
In fact, when Justice Verma was making his report after Nirbhaya, he said specifically that there should be no death penalty, because he felt that crime would increase and people will try to kill the victims. And I think to some extent, it could be possible that some of the victims have been killed because they didn't want them to come and complain in rape cases. But you have to remember this also, Faye, which is very important, but that right now, as per the NCRB figures 2019, conviction in rape cases is just 27.8%. So when you have such low conviction, that too so distant, then you need to have a harsh punishment so that at least the message goes, and it goes and knocks at every door that rape is a heinous offense and you would be hanged if you are going to do heinous offenses like gang rape or raping with violence. So I would definitely say I will not agree with this part that we should do away with death penalty, because when you don't have 100% conviction, when in 178 in a case of 178 rape rapist go scot-free. So this becomes a major issue. Now coming to that, has it increased? To some extent, it might have led to it, but still I'm not agreeing that every rape victim is killed because there is a death penalty to it. But yes, today when the government has brought all stakeholders and it has referred the Shakti bill to a joint select committee, I think all the NGOs should be taken on board, because as you rightly said in the beginning, that implied consent is a very important thing. Today we've not been able to get offense for marital rape, because there also the issue of consent comes in. And not only that, as a lawyer, I've seen in so many cases, the problem which would arise here is that a crime which has happened within four walls, how would you agree that husband said that I was expressing my conjugal rights and the wife says no, it was not? So in this case also, when two adult consensual have a relationship and you call it rape, because that definition in 375 of the IPC, I feel, is being misused to a great extent, because Supreme Court in a couple of cases has said that two adults who know their mind and enter into a physical relationship, and when the girl turns around and says it is rape, that is something that needs to be looked into. So till that extent, I feel that adult consensual relationship, because we are in a permissive society, and when women are also entering into a open relationship, we should not use it as a blackmailing tool. And already we have a provision called 211 of the IPC, which talks of if you misuse the law, if you cause damage to somebody's reputation, there is a provision for 2 years imprisonment. So again, adding another section saying that if somebody misuses the law would be penalized, and that is greatly hitting out to women and giving them a message that, look, beware, if you're filing a rape case, we can file a counter case.
Okay, so now it's on. Obviously, Abha has opened the can of worms, so we're well past polite conversation now. But I just want to ask you, Abha, let's assume, for argument's sake, there is a man and woman who are in a relationship. Is it not possible? And again, the Supreme Court has said this, that getting married or being in a relationship doesn't mean that you sign off open consent for the rest of your life. Isn't it not possible to withdraw that consent at some point and say no? Is it fair to argue that because the two were in a relationship, that consent is now a given forever?
How? You've been in a relationship for 364 days, and on the 365th day you say that no, I said no. How do you prove it? What do you have to prove that I had said no? See, law goes on hard facts. You require facts. And the man can also say, no, I misread it. We've been in a relationship till the time there is physical bruise, or, it's a very thin line, because I have handled so many cases like this where they've been in a relationship for such a long period, 4 years, 5 years, and then you come back and say it was rape. I don't agree to it.
Okay, so let me just let's just examine that point. Dr. Shah hasn't spoken yet. I just want to introduce the audience to Dr. Shah. She's been running an NGO that fights for the rights of women, specifically in reduction of crime of a sexual nature, for decades. So specifically qualified voice. Dr. Shah, on this point of consent, that consent can be withdrawn between two adults at any point. Ms. Abha Singh says that if you're in a relationship for a very long time, that becomes really difficult to prove. What's your response to that?
I'm surprised, Abhaji, because when you're fighting for marital rape, that's exactly it is. That fact that you have given consent to marriage doesn't mean that at every point of time you agree to a sexual relationship. And most of the time when we say that rape is there in multiple ways, that it's by coercion, it's by promise, all different ways in which a relationship is there. And I agree that, no woman is going to keep crying of rape, because today in our society, even today, the shame is on women. The family is shaming, everybody else is shaming her. So she's not going to keep crying rape just like that. So I think this whole idea of putting burden of consent on the woman is really something that is very problematic, I feel. And we really need to take that as head on and say that if you're going to doubt every person who comes to the court of law saying that she is lying, then you're starting the justice process itself in a very, very unequal way, because our society already privileges men by giving them the privilege of, she must be a loose woman. She's somebody who's been sleeping around. I mean, that's what we saw in Mathura, right? Mathura rape case, which started the whole protest, and all of us who came out. She was a 14-year-old tribal girl, and she was accused of having relationship and having had a boyfriend as a tribal society, where it's perfectly fine that she could have consented to having sexual relationship with two policemen in the police station, and both policemen were acquitted on the same count of saying that she must have consented. So I think this whole idea of consent has to be taken. Yes, the line is thin, but every rape case cannot be put in this kind of a thing of saying that, she must have consented, and putting it right in this law, saying you almost doubting her. And you are saying that if she is done a kind of, if we can prove false case, what about false case because investigation has not happened? What about the fact that nobody has actually done the kind of things that require for conviction to happen? Why is it that 27% is the conviction rate? Is it because the rest of the women are lying? It's not that. We have such a high percentage of women who are actually saying charge sheeted, but conviction rate is so low. So I think we really have to look at the entire gamut of conviction idea of where our institutions like police and justice systems are in relation to rape survivor before we start questioning the consent. So I think we really have to take that on board.
I noticed that Ms. Gowda wanted to say something. This question of how would you prove it, which is, we've heard everyone from judges to lawyers to policemen say, how are you going to prove it? What's the answer to that?
No, I think before that, I want to come to the what is rape? Rape is sexual intercourse without consent. Okay, so what does the prosecution have to prove? Prosecution has to prove penetration, object, penile, oral, whatever, or partial penetration against the consent of the woman. So both these concepts have to be proved by the prosecution already. Okay, so so therefore consent is there. Now what happens? Often what happens is that the defense is that this was consensual. How do we prove consent? So like in the example that Nandita gave, that, are there bruises on the body? How do I resist? How do I know that there is no consent? Because different women react to sexual assault very differently. Some of them may just be shocked such that I do not, there are no bruises on my body. So therefore, does it mean that I have given consent? Therefore, post Nirbhaya case and post the Verma committee report, in 2013, the central government brought in an explanation to consent. It meant that consent had to be unequivocally stated, either verbally or by gesture. So which means I have to say yes. And so therefore, there was an explanation given. Now, what does this law do? This actually negates that entire explanation and the definition of rape itself, which says that in certain circumstances we will presume consent. So which means, like I told you earlier, that most rape cases happen between known people. So which means ultimately, by combining this reading of 375 with this implied consent, all you're recognizing is stranger rape. I'm sorry to hear what Abha has stated. Yes, if I'm in a relationship for 364 days and on the 365th day I say no, my no means a no. In a country where we are, the world is going towards recognizing marital rape, and we're talking about delegitimizing, the entire definition of rape itself. Let me give you another example. For example, someone goes on a Tinder date. I get on a Tinder date, I meet somebody for a couple of times. Maybe the girl then says, okay, we can make out, we can kiss, we can do whatever that it is. But then subsequently she says, but I'm not allowing a penetrative sexual relationship. And then she's forced upon, and he forces himself on her. Under this definition, it would not amount to rape. Now, the question is that every section under the law is misused. Why is it that we find a clause for false complaints only under sexual harassment and sexual assault? If we have section 211 for any kind of false complaint, we have a law for perjury. Why is it that only with women's cases we find them, that we need to bring in this thing of false complaint or implied consent? It is because of this patriarchal notion that we still perceive women as manipulative and liars. And this is what our television serials also constantly teach us every day. We have not learned to see women in any different.
So let Abha Singh rebut. Abha Singh, go ahead.
Say now with punishment like death penalty, life imprisonment coming for rape, the definition of rape now needs to be revisited. You need to have two types of offenses. One is where it is a stranger committing rape, where it is a violent rape, where it is a gang rape. And the other is the consensual relationship rape, because how can somebody rape you for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and you keep quiet? Because now when you talk of death penalty, you need to revisit the definition. There have been so many cases where young boys or men have committed suicide because they've been in a relationship which has not worked, because you definitely need to look into it when you talk of death penalty. Secondly, I would like to tell you that
therefore remove death penalty.
No, the issue is this: when you say how can a person be raped for 3 years, 4 years, an adult, we are not talking of children. We are saying
I know women who have been in marriages for 25 years.
Listen, when a child is below 12 years and you rape, it is death penalty. But two adult consensual relationship for 3 years and 4 years cannot be termed as rape, because you promise marriage. Supreme Court has clearly said that you are also enjoying the relationship, and now today after 4 years when you come, we know so many cases where out of court settlement have taken, women have taken big money. So definitely now the parliament needs to revisit the whole definition of 375. We have to look both ways. We cannot just let laws be misused by a selected few. And of course, I am saying conviction rate is less, because let me tell you, these consensual rapes are called technical rapes in the police parlance, because people have been living together. That is why the conviction rate is less, because these are unknown people. Gang rapes are not even more than 30 to 40%. Basically, it's not family, it is consensual. And we know in this permissive society, this is an issue we need to revisit. I'm not discussing marital rape. I'm discussing this Shakti bill, which has come in. So implied consent has to be looked into. If you withdraw the consent, you have to prove it. If there are bruises on your body, my question is, what stops a woman in walking out of this marriage? Nobody stops you.
So you are saying, one second, Veena ji, I'll come to you in a second. So Abha Singh, you're specifically talking about live-in relationships.
Yes.
Because in India, obviously, we believe, we don't, our court doesn't believe, or our laws don't believe in marital rape. So we never believe that a husband could actually rape a wife, or we believe that she is his property, so he can rape her whenever he wants to. But you're saying in a live-in relationship, or a relationship where consensual sex has already happened once, they can never be raped.
No, that definition needs to be changed.
What if the couple breaks up and the guy shows up again and rapes her?
What happens? That is different. If you've broken up, you have to prove that we are no longer living together and he has raped me. But if you've been together for so many years under the false promise of marriage, that is what 375 says, that if you have a physical relationship under a false promise of marriage, I want to say girls are equally permissive, progressive. They know what it is. So why are you getting into a physical relationship voluntarily?
Okay, all right. Rebuttals, Dr. Shah is very quiet. Okay, Veena,
have to understand is this. Now, by bringing in this implied consent, now judge always has the power to look at the evidence and to say that whether this was consensual or non-consensual. By bringing it into the statute, what you're actually doing is giving police the power to decide whether they will file an FIR or not. So the police are already saying in if people were in a relationship or if the circumstances are such. So you're basically even taking away the right of the woman to file a complaint, because here the police can say that this is implied consent, therefore I'm not filing an FIR. Ms. Abha is mistaken, because anyway the courts do have the power to appreciate evidence, and in cases that she's speaking of, say that this is that this is not rape. But by adding it here, you're giving this power to the police, and it is extremely unfair on women, because you're taking away their access to law itself.
No, but the
No,
police,
and also
police
I just
has
want to
48 hours to investigate and convert it into an FIR. Police will take your complaint because 166A of the IPC clearly says that if a woman comes to complain in the case of 354 or 375, if the cop does not register her complaint, he himself can be put behind bars and the punishment is 6 months to 2 years.
But you have implied consent and they're not bound to.
IPC is already there. And this was added in the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013. So we cannot say
Abhaji, in domestic violence cases, police are saying husband hi marta hai na, kya farak padta hai. Now we are saying that even though law exists and we are saying that it's a criminal offense, how many women are getting supported because of domestic violence? So I think to say that this kind of way that we are going to give power to every other institution and not give power to women is something actually going to take away the right that we have. And I agree that lawyers should help women not file the case. Lawyers are only then suggesting that you file this case and that case even in cases. So even we are looking at 498A, we are seeing that actually women are not getting justice. Women are not even filing and we are talking about misuse. So this whole idea of misuse is a way to not give justice to women. And I think that is what we really need to look at, because women are not just going to keep filing cases. And I agree that maybe there might be a few cases where women have actually used it, but you cannot give this right to the police and to the court by not listening to what women have to say. You're almost saying that women are lying when they cry rape. So date rapes don't have to be taken up. I mean, this is the biggest issue today in USA and everywhere where we are talking about date rapes. So Tinder rape, any other, even in colleges where we are working, we are finding that in relationship, if you don't agree to sleep together, that boyfriend will go away. So this whole pressure that is getting built around the relationship is something that we cannot deny, right?
Yes. Dr. Shah, I just also want to ask you, there is a provision in this law to punish women who bring what they call false
cases. Yeah.
What is a false case? Does this mean that if a case does not result in conviction, that is now a false case? Because at a conviction rate of 1 out of 5,
that's what she's calling technical case. So almost we are saying that out of almost 88% of charge sheeted cases, if only 27% are getting conviction, that means the rest of the women are false cases, technical cases, liars. And that's what we are trying to say. Instead of saying that police are not investigating, what's the kind of medical evidence that we are collecting? What is the way in which, what's the support system that we have created? What's the monitoring mechanism that we have created to ensure that police actually are investigating? We are saying we're going to punish the police when they don't investigate. How many police have been actually punished? I want to know. How many, what kind of monitoring mechanism we have? And when we have done that in Maharashtra, when we did the monitoring performance of public prosecutor, when we actually did reviewing and segregating of pending cases and setting up investigating wings in the police station, there has been an increase in conviction rate in Maharashtra. So why can't we work on those kinds of things instead of saying women are lying?
Ms. Gowda?
See, now, like you said, how do we prove false cases? Okay, now why is there such a reduced, such less conviction? One is because investigation is shoddy. Okay, two is that trials are shoddily conducted. So therefore, are we going to say that every case that was disproved is a false complaint? No, you cannot say that. Anyway, law already has, you have perjury, you have 211, you have defamation. All this already anyway, if it's a false complaint, these sections can be invoked and cases can be filed against the woman. There is no need to bring it in. My question is, when you're saying this is for safety and security of women, then why are you bringing in provisions that are against women? Then you have to say this is to protect the accused. Don't, in the name of women, create a legislation and then use it against us. I mean, this is extremely misleading. And we must understand this, that the minute you say false complaint, like for example, even in sexual harassment at workplace, it's not easy for women to file complaints. Because even today, I mean, it will affect her marriage possibility. She's literally socially dead if someone says that you've had sexual relationship with this woman. So therefore, filing false complaints is not very easy. And I'm sorry, I don't know which part of India that Ms. Abha is speaking about. I know cases where women are living in, sexually abused for 25 years in a marriage. Of course, it's very difficult for a woman. A young person believes that the minute she sleeps with somebody, then her tan, man, badan belongs to that man. I mean, this is what society teaches us. How do we rectify these wrongs?
I also want to point out here, purely on a cultural basis, films and Bollywood has taught us for decades that a woman will never come out and actually say yes, that, you know, her no is actually yes, and she's being coy, and you have to keep asking, and you have to sort of wear her down, and, you know, she will eventually agree. So how do we then, and I have had a lot of very, very respectful young men tell me that Indian women don't actually come out and say, yes, I want sex in so many words. They're very coy about it. And, you know, they're very like, no, 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 yes, 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 no, no, no. So where is that blurred communication in a practical sense? Where is the solution there?
See, now we have to also, there are very many issues in this. Most offenses against women take place within the four walls when there is no evidence. It's not like a sexually harassed when everybody is looking for sexually assaulted. So therefore, the question of proof becomes very difficult. That is why the courts have, over a period of time, relied on, for example, the consistent statement of the victim or the survivor herself. And if she's been consistent, then even her statement is sufficient to prove. But it's not that easy. So therefore, I mean, these are a little difficult, and the courts have, over a period of time, law will evolve, because the law is about principles of natural justice, fair trial. We have to have a robust legal system. And not, so that is how you actually deal with such cases, to have a robust legal system rather than removing women from the ambit of law itself. Because of the failures of your system, then you don't take away women's rights. Instead of that, let's focus on infrastructure. Let's increase the number of judges. Let's increase the number of police. Let's let's give more money to investigative divisions, forensic laboratories, more judges. So we have to more prosecutors, because there are very few prosecutors. Let's pay them much better. Let's have a budget allocation for that. There are so many other ways of dealing with security and safety of women, rather than attempting, in the name of protecting women, to remove women actually from the ambit of law.
Well, I want to, unless someone has a rebuttal to that, I want to introduce the next part of this conversation, which is the bill suggests that the entire investigation be completed in 15 days and the trial be completed in 30 days. Now, how practical is this given the pendency in our courts? So there are already cases pending in courts for decades and decades. We haven't actually worked through the backlog. So is this a practical thing? And would we need more prosecutors, more investigators, more forensics, more judges in order to be able to achieve this goal? Is it fair to just say we need it done in a month? Or will the legal system need that help? Abha Singh, you go first.
One thing I would like to say first is, as we were talking earlier, Justice Verma very clearly said that rape should be treated as a crime, not as a sense of shame. So that change of mindset is a must, because the moment you start treating as a crime, you are emboldened, you would come register the complaint rather than think about it that you are destroyed. Secondly, Supreme Court in 2018 had approved as a law under 141 article was witness protection scheme. And it clearly said that pan India, it should be implemented, be it victim of sexual assault, be it witnesses, they should be protected so that your conviction takes place, a fair trial takes place. In fact, the Supreme Court clearly said that fair trial is as important as human right, and it is a part of Article 21. Right to life means that you get a fair trial. I think that is what is first required, that you embolden the victim to come forward, register the complaint, you embolden the witnesses to come forward and depose, because in Asaram case, not one, 3 victims have been shot at, kidnapped, killed. So this is very important. But now coming to your question, that 15 days and 30 days, we all know the number of policemen, the shortage of cops. Most of them are doing VIP duties, bandobast. On an average, between 878 people, there is one cop. So, and 60% of the cops are doing VIP duties. So, if you're trying to make it 15 days for investigation, you require a separate unit of the police which will be fully devoted to investigations and trial also. Then you need to have equal number of courts and judges, because I go to courts and so many times the first thing you hear, the judge is on leave or judge has gone to the jail for a trial, and or the other side is not there. So then you need to have the proper infrastructure by just putting it in paper. In 2018, the witness protection scheme was supposed to be implemented. Till now, it has not been implemented. In fact, I went to Uttar Pradesh and I filed it in the Lucknow bench of Allahabad High Court last month that why don't you implement it? And the reply I got from the judge was that you go back to Supreme Court. Why have you come to UP? I said, no, because UP needs it more amount of Unnao rape case, Hathras rape case. I am compelled to come to this state. So I think we need to first reform the criminal justice system, because it's very easy. You may get your brownie points by saying that like Disha Act, we have got Shakti bill, but it doesn't happen on paper. It has to happen on the ground level.
True.
Same question to the other panelists as well. Go ahead, Ms. Gowda.
No, so I feel that I agree with Abha ma'am that we really need the infrastructure to be increased much more, and we need to give that kind of investigative thing not only at the level of judges but also at the level of police. Like the whole idea of medical profession, how well are they trained to take up the forensic? What are the kinds of, like, you know, there's a whole rape kit that has been developed. Is that kind of implemented? How do you document the kind of evidence that's required, which will stand in court of law? That kind of process of including those processes of trainings have to be there at every level. Even our one-stop crisis center, just one-stop crisis center in one district is not enough. How can we increase those kinds of infrastructure and services that are available? And what you require, like say, for example, Manodharya scheme, which was there to compensate on rape survivor, even those things are not being properly implemented. So how does a woman get emboldened? Because even though we want to say it's crime and you should not have shame, society doesn't look at like that. It's today, a woman comes out and says she's raped, she's not going to be supported in such a big way. You know, people are still looking and saying, oh, acha, she's the one who's raped. I mean, even if you look at the Shakti Mill rape survivor, she wouldn't want to come out and speak, even though there was so much of support that was there. And even though she came and complained, because the society does not agree to that kind of support. So I think that we have to look at those reality factor. And I want to just come back to your earlier thing that yes, women are not able to say no and yes in our society, because even in a relationship, if women said yes, the first reaction that the man will have is, "Are chalu cheez hai." You know, this is the reality that we have. So even though they are interested in it, if she says yes, she's perceived in a morally, doubtful way. And that is something that we need to challenge. And we have been constantly talking that Bollywood has a huge role to play in this, and that, you know, stalking is almost permitted, you know, that you should stalk a person if you love. And that kind of a mindset also needs to change, and that goes to one step more, that if she's saying no, you can force yourself on her, and that's part of love, and that has to be challenged.
Ms. Gowda, do you have a point on this? And I also want to just put before the panel, overseas at least, and this is a recommendation that has been placed in police reforms repeatedly, that police personnel who investigate be turned into specialists, into detectives, and the police personnel who do bandobast and VIP security and just normal security be separated into two teams. So we build a team of specialists who learn over a period of time how to be better and better at it. But we're understaffed, we're underpaid, we're undertrained in our police forces all over the country. And so this has become almost, wishful thinking. Ms. Gowda.
Yeah, now there were two questions. One is about the time frame. I do think there has to be some kind of a time frame. Otherwise cases just go on and on. But the time frame that is stated here of 15 days, 1 month, 2 months is really not reasonable at all. On the contrary, what it will do is that it will add to the hasty investigation and the shoddy investigation. It's not sufficient time because of infrastructure, lacking in infrastructure. These timelines are also not reasonable. Now, that 1 month period, like we said, no prosecutors, so that's not possible too. So there should be some kind of a time frame, but this seems too unreasonable, and the government must relook at it. Yes, I do agree. I think, forget specialization to the effect of forensics. Our police don't have the sensitivity in asking questions. When when a woman comes to file her complaint, how do you deal with this survivor of, the victim of sexual assault? They will ask you to we have that women have to question the victim. Not that just because they're women, they are sensitive. What is the environment in which you actually record her statement? So yes, all of this needs a lot of work. I mean, the manner in which they ask you questions, not just like they say, a woman is raped twice. One, the actual incident, and the second is the process itself. I think she's raped multiple times. In the manner in which the police ask her questions, then what happens in the court, then the cross-examination. So I think we have to start with the basics of even learning to be sensitive to women who want to file complaints or who need to file complaints of sexual harassment and sexual assault. But yes, we would need I think you would need a specialized set of officers, prosecutors. Will
Well,
be.
there is also in this bill or in the proposed bills a stronger punishment of 2 years and 1 lakh rupees fine for threatening and intimidating women on social media. I'm smiling because I have a list of people who threaten and intimidate me, and also a stronger, punishment for acid attacks. And we know that there has been a campaign to remove acid from the shelves in India because it's effectively used as a weapon, but it's easily available as a cleaning solution when there are many alternatives to cleaning solutions. Acid should just be banned in the country as contraband, but that has not happened. But the victim will be given a compensation of 10 lakh rupees, which will be collected as a fine from the accused. So both of these points, I want to understand if the panel has objection to either of these, or do you believe that these are good things? Abha Singh, Twitter and intimidation on social media. Yes.
That 10 lakh compensation is welcome, because at least now we started thinking on those lines. And yes, you are very right, because the Supreme Court, when Lakshmi had gone for that PIL in the acid attack case, Supreme Court had clearly said that the local SDM is supposed to visit the shops and see if a register is maintained who has bought the acid across the counter. So we have not maintained that, and acid is openly available. We need to check into it, because I was checking the NCRB figures, and UP tops with maximum acid attack cases. And when I researched on it, I found that it starts with stalking. The moment a woman says no to a man's proposal, he destroys her face, because that is his way of getting back. So I think acid attack requires even a stronger punishment. But yes, 10 lakhs rupees will not give back a woman her life, what she loses. But Bangladesh, if you see, has been able to control acid attack cases totally, because they controlled the sale of acids, they controlled, they provided death penalty for acid attack cases. So I think we definitely need to work more on that. But still, at least we've started talking about it. India did not have a specific offense for acid attack. We only, after 2013, we brought that 326A and 326B. So I think we need to work more in this direction.
Dr. Shah, on the point of
I would say that yes, while we're talking everything about law, we also need to really engage the way our society is looking at some of these things. How do you get back to somebody? Like on one hand, we are saying that women will do false cases and men will go and just destroy her face. And so I think this whole idea of the way we are looking at getting back to each other, can we really relook at? So I think the whole idea of public awareness, that the state needs to engage. How do we talk to young men? I mean, we are working in colleges and in schools, and what is the conversation we are having about relationship, about power, about engaging with young people. And I think that conversation is completely missing. While I agree that, all these heinous crimes have to be punished, but what about the fact that we can prevent so many things? And how can we prevent? And I really feel that as a society, we are failing in this process of some kind of preventive measure that we can do. And how can we bring, just as a state, what is the kind of role we can play in this preventive process? And I think really that we need to bring those measures also, and state needs to invest in this process of awareness also.
Ms. Gowda, the point of social media and intimidation of women on social media attracting a 2-year, sentencing?
See, one is that a lot of this is already there in the law. It's there in the Information Technology Act. It is there in the, under the IPC too. And so there are certain technical issues on, so therefore the need to bring in another section, I don't know, because I feel that even if this were a good provision, it's not sufficient enough for us to bring in a new law. Let's focus on implementation of the existing laws itself. And we've seen that even the existing laws in themselves are not really effective, and that there is continued threat on social media, etc. But I mean, in that sense, at least it's not detrimental to that extent. But there are so many other very draconian sections in this law. I think what many people are not even discussing and have looked at, and if I'm permitted to go into another section of it, is what is called preventive detention. I mean, just to say that we as feminists are not anti-men. We are for fair trial and we are for principles of natural justice. Now, this law intends to bring in what is called preventive detention. Now, preventive detention of 15 days. If you feel that if the police officer believes that there's a possibility of someone committing sexual assault, then you can detain someone or to prevent him from doing this. Now, this doesn't stand the test of Constitution or right to life. You can't take away somebody's fundamental right to life and movement and preventively detain them. So therefore it's not, this is something
would it be better, Veena ji, if what they did instead was actually took complaints of stalking more seriously?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. And I think, like I've said, consistency and certainty. If existing complaints are taken seriously, for example, when you file a complaint and that complaint is taken seriously and it results in certain action, even if it is 1 month, 1 year, whatever, that there is some kind of a punishment and it is resolved quickly, it is heard quickly, I think that will take us much further in bringing justice for women and reducing the crime rate, rather than this kind of extreme laws of either death penalty or of saying preventive detention. Because we also need to understand that we must not, criminal law is what? Criminal law is state versus the individual to that extent. So when you put in these kind of sections of preventive detention, etc., you're also strengthening the state. And for example, a police officer may not like somebody of certain region, certain community, etc., and then decide that he's probably going to commit an offense and pick him up. That's not the kind of road that we want criminal justice, criminal system to go in. So whenever we talk of criminal law, I think we must speak with much more responsibility, and we must be very, very careful that we do not then trample upon constitutional rights.
All right, we've run out of time here. I want to thank our panelists for speaking to us. I just want to introduce one idea that I want to leave everybody with. This is a slightly shocking idea. People raise their eyebrows every time I talk about it. The problem also fundamentally is that we look at consent as no means no. We don't look at consent as yes means yes. It's about a woman saying yes more than her saying stop. So this, if we work backwards, comes from the idea that in our country, we fail to acknowledge female sexual pleasure, that women enjoy sex, that women want sex, that women need sex, that women deserve sex. We refuse to acknowledge it. Sex is something that is done to a woman unless she says no. So she doesn't need to enjoy it. She doesn't need to want it or need it. She just has to not do anything, not say no, which is which is worrying because we don't teach young boys that a woman has to enjoy it. We don't teach young boys to respect a woman's pleasure. If a woman says, yes, I want sex, she's automatically loose. She's, she's a slut. She's not to be taken seriously. She's probably saying it to a bunch of other guys.
Yeah.
And this idea is this false idea which runs through our entire system, from our schools to our colleges, to our police, to our judges, to our hospitals, to our doctors. I mean, cases when, even gynecologists will not ask you if you are sexually active. They'll ask if you're married or not. Like, as if that is, that's the question. So the idea, and for some reason, we don't acknowledge it, the idea that women shouldn't enjoy sex, or shouldn't want it, or shouldn't need it, is the kernel, the problem from where a lot of these issues rise politically, socially, and of course, personally. Maybe we need to just stop and personally, I mean, I'm not asking you to preach it to the world, but personally just rethink how we approach this, both as women and as men. Do we look at other women and say, look at her asking for it? What does asking for it mean? In a world when we want women's no to mean no, then asking for it should be a good thing. Asking for it means you've given consent. You've actually asked for sex. The sort of negative shroud in which people say that, look at the way, look at how she's talking to him, look at what she's wearing, she's totally asking for it. That's the problem. Because we can't argue both ends of this. We can't say that we want consent without respecting the consent when it is given. And that's where our problem entirely exists. And then we push it forward to every generation through our films, through our ads, through what we teach our little boys, through what we teach our little girls. We teach this from generation to generation, that good girls don't like sex, that good girls don't want it, they don't enjoy it. And that is wrong. Female sexual pleasure is a very important thing that needs to be taken more seriously. We need to read about it. We need to understand it. We need to talk about it. That's my submission to the audience and the panel. I hope you do spend some time thinking about it, talking about it, maybe with your partners and with your loved ones. And I hope that makes some sort of a difference. But for now, thank you so much for having this conversation for us. Like it was said, the Maharashtra government has decided to refer this law to a joint select committee, which means they're going to relook at it one more time. A win for democracy, because they've taken into consideration the fact that women are uncomfortable with this law. Hopefully the select committee will hear out the women who have written this very important letter. For now, thanks for watching and good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Faye.